Check. Okay, there we go. Kind of feel a little bit out of my element because I normally use my phone, but my phone is recording right now. So I actually have to print this out. Huh? Yeah. Old school. The title of my message today is We Are Called to Be More. It's very concerning living in the time that we are living right now. A lot of things have been going on, not only just with the COVID and, not just with the COVID, but the entire situation happening in our nation. The one thing that I began to realize this past week at work is that people are getting way more rude. Way more rude. Way more rude. Some people don't understand that stores, if we run out of product, it's not because we're trying to run out of product, it's because we're not getting the product. I don't know how many times I have to tell people, no, we don't have ground pork today. When are you going to get it? Hopefully next week. Or people actually hand me a piece of pork and say, can you just ground this for me? Like, no. No, I can't. Or how people get very upset that our chickens are no longer big chickens. They're smaller. I have no control over that. None of us have any control over that. How come? How come your chickens are so small? Well, number one, sir, they're not my chickens. I didn't raise them. I'm sorry. We ran out of the big chickens. Have you noticed there's less chickens on the streets? Yes, that's that one right there. Thank you very much. And through all of this weirdness, and through all of this confusion, and through all of this rudeness, we are still called to be more. We are called to be more than what the world perceives us to be. We are called to be more than what anybody thinks that we ought to be. We are called to be more. In Ephesians chapter 4, starting at verse 1 through 6, I'm reading it from the NLT. Sorry, it's easier for me to understand the NLT than it is for me to understand the other versions. Therefore, this is Paul, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourself united in the Spirit, building yourselves up together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit. Just as you have been called to one glorious hope for the future, there is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, in all, and living through all. Now, here's something very interesting when you begin to realize about this. When you view Paul, a lot of people, when they view Paul, they always view him as one of the greatest evangelists the world has ever seen, right? Right? Okay, thank you. He is viewed as one of the greatest evangelists this world has ever seen. But before he was the evangelist, people used to know him as Saul the murderer. His name brought fear to the hearts of Christians. It wasn't, hooray, Saul's coming to town. It's like, yo, Saul's coming to town. And they ran. If we were to look at Paul, and just simply judge him on what he used to be. Our question would be, what in the world in his past qualified him to be the greatest evangelist in biblical times? Well, he was trained. He knew the law. He knew this. He knew that. Yeah, but Saul was a murderer. Saul wasn't just a murderer. He was a mass murderer. He wasn't killing one Christian at a time. He was killing many Christians at a time. And we begin to see this. And we begin to see that, if we just really look at Saul just from that point of view, if we just look at him as Saul, nothing more, we will begin to lose the sight of what God can do in a person's life. Saul was called to be Paul. He was called to be more than what he was. He was called to be more than what he was doing. He was called to be more than what he was known for. He became the greatest evangelist in his time because he had that encounter with God. And that began to change everything for him. It began to change who he was, where now people who used to be afraid of him welcomed him with open arms. And he founded so many churches. If people were just to look at us and our past and see what we used to do and see who we were before and see everything else, people will begin to question and wonder, what qualifies you to become a Paul? How many of you will admit that I'll just put it this way, your Saul is not that pretty? Right? Your Saul ain't that pretty. Man, if we were to lay out our Sauls out and just let the story go and go and go and go and go, people would probably stop and look at us and be like, yo, you messed up. You messed up. You nuts. You crazy. But my Saul got me to the point where I experience who God is. And it's helping me to become my Paul. It is calling me to be more than what I am. It's calling me to be more than who I've been. It's calling me to be better than what I used to be. And it's very disheartening for me. I'm not quite sure for anyone else in here, or even those who are going to be watching this at home. But there seems to be such a big conflict in the church in itself. Where there seems to be a lot of people in churches who are only focusing on the Saul and not looking at the person who could become the Paul. It's frustrating. It's irritating, and it's downright very disheartening when you have Paul writing this letter that says, always be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, make an allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourself united in the Spirit, binding yourself together with peace. And yet it seems that the most judgmental place is the church. I cannot tell you how many people I have encountered in just this span of time of quarantine and isolation. Because let's face it, you're only around a certain amount of people, and people you don't normally talk to, you end up talking to, you get to know them a little more. How many of them used to go to church but stopped going to church because they just felt that every time they went, they were being judged? Not on what God could do for them and what God can take them to, but because of what position they were at in their life. And it's disheartening to me. It's hard for me to understand this. It's hard for me to picture in my mind in the world where we so boldly say, WWJD, what would Jesus do? And yes, Pastor mentioned it last week. It's one thing to know what Jesus did, but are we brave enough to do it? It's so disheartening to me that there is a church out there that is so riddled with this judgmentalness towards people that they forgot that Jesus didn't hang around church people. Jesus didn't hang around church people. You don't believe me? I don't think the lady who washed Jesus' feet with her hair with that perfume was in the temple every day. I'm pretty sure she wasn't allowed in the temple. And what was Jesus' response to the man who said, what are you doing? Why are you letting her do this? I said, excuse me, I've come into your house. You're a high-ranking official. You know people. You have been to the church. You are an established figure in the temple. You didn't even offer me a drink. This lady brought everything she had to me. It's disheartening for me to see people in the church who are literally fighting I don't know how to say this correctly or nicely, who are literally fighting against wearing one of these. Now, my experience is a little bit different than everyone else because I work at a very busy location. I deal with a lot of people every single day. A lot of people. As uncomfortable as this is, I am thankful for it. I am thankful for it. I saw online where a lady was giving a testimony, and she went over there and she said that you're making us wear a mask, and you're literally taking away the breath that God has given to us because God has given us breath. Well, you'll still have the breath. You'll still have the breath. To say that a mask will stop God's breath is like saying that God wasn't able to roll the stone away. And the last I checked, the stone rolled away. Nothing is impossible for God. Nothing is impossible for him. This is not even a question about if I wear a mask, I am blocking something that is my God-given right. No, if God made it your right, you will have it. All right? And if God says, hey, guess what? You're going home. Guess what? You're going home. We're fighting against authority figures. And we're going over there saying, you can't let us do this, it's against this, it's against that. But wait a minute, because in Titus 3, verses 1, it says, remind the believers to submit to government and its officers. They should be obedient, always ready to do what is good. They must not slander anyone and must avoid quarreling. Instead, they should be gentle and show true humility to everyone. I'm going to repeat the first 3 words, okay? Remind the believers. Remind the believers. Remind the ones who say they are my children. Remind the ones who say they are mine. Now, Rita, I know you're plenty Portuguese in the world, right? So you got to repeat it over and over and over and over and over again. I'm finding that out with my dad. My dad's been home taking care of mom. By the way, my mom is doing better. She's been going to therapy. She's walking a little bit more. Doesn't have to use the cane. It's still fun to make fun of her. It's even better when, the dog gets tired of walking behind her. Our dog has been kind of like her little nurse at home and walking slowly, making sure mom's okay, everything is good. You just see that dog get fed up with how slow she's walking, just walk around her. It's like, gosh, mom, hurry up. I know there's Portuguese in the church. Should I clarify that for the people who are online, what a Portuguese is? Okay. Tim, what would you call a Portuguese on the mainland? I have no idea. Huh? A what? Polak? Polak. Oh. The more you know. Okay? There's Portuguese everywhere. So I know you have to kind of repeat this type of stuff over and over and over again. So it gets in there. But we are called to submit to government. And we are called to do this because first and foremost, the reason why they're in leadership to begin with is because God put them there. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that some of the most craziest people in history who have led countries were put in that position because God put them there? Well, if God's people don't always do what they're supposed to do, God will find some way to get their attention, even if it means putting weird people in leadership that you probably think they probably shouldn't be there. God has many ways to kind of tell his children, wake up. They should be obedient, always ready to do what is good. They must not slander anyone and must avoid quarreling. Instead, they should be gentle and show true humility to everyone. That is the hardest thing to do right now. Because when you encounter people who have been just cooped up in the house, and I get it. It's great to be outside. It's great to do this. And I am speaking from my experience. You all know where I work, but because this is going online, I can't say where I work because they'll find out and do stuff. You all know we have this lovely habit of moving things around, right? How many of you have ever walked into one of the warehouses and gone to the aisle where the dog food was the last time just to find potato chips? Right? How many of you have gone into the warehouse, gone to the place where the milk and eggs were just to realize there's yogurt? It's frustrating, right? Yeah, for us too. There was a whole month and a half where people were asking me, where's the coffee? Where's the coffee? Have you seen the coffee? Coffee, 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 coffee. And for a whole month, I had no idea they moved it. So I'm telling people, it's in this aisle, this aisle, this aisle, this. It wasn't until one guy said, Hawaiian, I went over there. It's bread. And I went, oh, for real? And I had to walk over there and go, oh, well, then I don't know. It is hard to have true humility to everyone when sometimes you just want to reach over the counter and choke their necks. When sometimes you just want to go over there and be like, hold your membership to the glass, not throw it at me. When you want to really go over there and say, I don't grow the chickens, so I'm sorry if they're small, but hey, they're cheaper now. Or how many times you have to tell people, I'm sorry, we're out of that product. We don't know when it's going to come in because all the shipping schedules is all messed up at the moment. And you get the response of, well, when is it coming in? I'm sorry, we're out of that product. We don't know when it's going to come in because the shipping schedule is all different. And your response to me, sir, is, when is it going to come in? Sunday. It is so hard to do this. And it's so easy to just get to the point where people throw things at you, you just pick it up and go. It is so easy when you deal with people who are just so tired and aggravated that you just want to fling back tired and aggravated on top of them and go over there and just be like, hello, dummy. Let me break this down as easily as possible. I have an aunt, my dad's cousin, who has this, I don't want to call it skill because it's not, it's very mean. She is able to look at you straight in the face with a smile and downgrade you to the point that you think she's being nice. And it's not until later on that day, when you just began to think about the day, that all of a sudden you remember the words that she said and you just went, ah. Oh, that wasn't really nice. Oh my gosh, you did it with a smile. Oh my goodness. But we're called to be more. We're called to be humble. We're called to show humility. We're called to go over there that when people start to begin to throw everything at us, we have to go over there. I am rubber, you are glue. Everything you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. Whoever knew that those old little rhymes back when we were kids actually show us how we're supposed to act as a follower of Christ? Yes, we're not going to agree with everything that everybody says. Yes, we really would love to punch you in your face. But guess what? Jesus died for you as well. And I have to remind myself about that right now because him on the cross was on there for you also. And even though I really like punch your face, I am reminded of the one who died for me. And because he not only died for me, he died for you as well. I will show more than what you're showing me. I will love more than what you're showing me. Because you need him, Saul, as much as I need him, Paul. In Ephesians 5, verses 1 and 2, it says, imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love, following the examples of Christ. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, as a pleasing aroma to God. We are called to imitate him. We are called to be like him. Are we going to be perfect at it? Of course not. Are we going to slip up? Yes, we are. But at the end of someone talking with us, can they honestly say, you know what? I felt like I was at church with that guy. And not like in a bad way. One of the weirdest compliments that I've ever received was when I had to take public speaking back in college, and we had like literally 6 minutes to give a 30-minute presentation. And on the review paper, someone wrote on top of there, the way you spoke, I felt like I was in church and not in a bad way. When we encounter people, are you being more than you? Are you being more than what is natural for you? And when people see you, do they see the Paul first instead of seeing the Saul? What are people seeing? Are they seeing a reflection? Are they seeing an imitation of who Jesus is? Or do they see someone that they're just like, I really want to get away? James 1, 19 and 20 says, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. Right now, I'll be honest with you, a lot of churches need to really punch in on this. A lot of Christians have to really punch in on this. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. I have heard online people saying, well, my anger is a holy anger. No, it's not. No, it's not. No. Because trust me, you do not want to see God's holy anger. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. Are you easy to talk to? Do you listen to the person, and I mean really listen to the person, and then speak? Honestly, locally, that's kind of hard to do because we've been trained to just, on Tuesday I went to the store. It wasn't Tuesday, it was Wednesday. Oh, okay, so I went to the store one day. Yeah, I don't know. I went cook 5 cups of rice. It wasn't 5 cups, it was 6. I went cook rice. You ever notice how short local answers really are now? Right? Nothing's really ever explained out because there's always the fear that someone is going to cut you off? You don't believe me? Tell me a local guy who says goodbye. Okay. Right? Okay then. Why? Because there comes to the point where someone might say, good. And when, hey brother, you know what? You ever thought about it? Like, ay, sauce, I just like leave. We have become products of our own creation where we are so quick to respond and yet not hear the whole story. We're so quick to make a call and really not stop and look over everything. Slow and steady does win the race. It also makes you not look like a fool. Because when you stand there and you begin to listen to what they're saying, to be slow to speak and get slow to anger, you become a better representation of who God is than if you are quick to respond. Well, you know, this and this and this and this. It's notorious in my family. My sisters, it's become a habit where I'm talking to my sisters and one of my sisters said, well, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I said, if you let me finish, you would have heard me say da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then the response is, oh, that makes sense. We're called to be more like Christ. We are called to show his love and affection. We are called to be we're called to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. God, in this case, God wants us to hear what the people are saying because you cannot help the person if you do not hear what they're saying. You cannot help the person. And this part right here, it took me a really long time because I was fighting with God, but I know I need to say this. We are called to be more. And as we are called to be more, it means that we, as the church, cannot be racist. We cannot be racist. In Galatians 3:28 said, there is no longer Jew nor Gentile, no slave nor free, male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. There was a conversation I was having with one of my coworkers, and he began to just explain all this type of stuff and everything else, and he just asked me, I'm going to ask you for your biblical opinion. That was actually the word he said, biblical opinion. He said, looking at the Bible, what do you see when it comes to this? I said, when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to this situation, when it comes to everything else like that, I don't ever read that Jesus is coming back for his Hawaiian bride, his white bride, his black bride, his Hispanic bride. I read that Jesus is coming back for his bride. I don't read that Jesus is coming back for his white church, his Hawaiian church, his Samoan church. I hear that Jesus is coming back for his church. It's even written in Revelation so plainly. Revelation 7:9 says, after this I saw a vast crowd, too great to count, every tribe and every nation and people and language standing in front of the throne and before the Lamb. They were clothed in white robes and held palm branches in their hands, and they were shouting with a great roar, salvation comes from our God who sits on the throne and a Lamb. He's a controversial person to talk about in this day and age, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. Right after the Civil War in Virginia, an Episcopal church. They still had segregation in the church. All the colors were up in the balcony, everyone else is on the floor in the regular seats. And it came time for communion. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to an Episcopal church or a Catholic church. You know how we hand you the elements and everything else like that. They come up, kneel down, and, they get the elements put into their mouths. I'm sorry, that's just gross. And the line for the communion was going on, and the priest was giving the wafers, and they're drinking the cup, and all of a sudden, everything came to a complete halt, and the priest stood there in shock. And everybody on the bottom of the church stood there in shock, as at the altar was an African-American man who went on his knee to receive communion for the very first time in his life. And for a good 15 minutes, everybody just stood there not knowing what to do. And then out of nowhere, a stoic man walks up, gets on his knees next to the African American, and receives communion next to him. And that man was Robert E. Lee. Yes, the general, the head of the Confederate Army. Did he experience backlash? Oh, you betcha. People walked outside and they went straight to him and say, how could you do that? How could you kneel down next to that man? How could you do that, General? And General Lee looked at the people straight in the face, and he said, the ground is level at the cross. The ground is level at the cross. God doesn't care what race you are. God doesn't care the color of your skin, the background you come from. God doesn't care how bad your soul is. The ground is level at the cross. And here's the most profound thing that hit me when studying for this, is that Jesus says, take up and carry your cross. What does that mean in this perspective? It means this, that no matter where you go, if you call yourself a child of God, the ground is level with that cross. It doesn't matter where that person comes from. It doesn't matter their background. It doesn't matter if you agree with them or not. The ground is level at the cross. And it's time for us as Christians in this nation, and it's time for us as Christians all over the world who are dealing with such confusion and chaos to remember that above all else, it is about Jesus and who he is. It is about reaching a world who does not understand it, and is about reaching the world who have only seen my past and they're seeing me now. They only know me from from Saul, and I am Paul now, and now they're wondering, how in the world? Come, the ground is level. I can show you how. From beginning to the end, it will always be. No matter what, about Jesus. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him, they will not perish, but they will have everlasting life. God loves the world. We are called to be more. We are called to show who he is. We are called to take up our cross daily and remind ourselves that the ground is level. That there is no hierarchy, there is no better, there is no nothing, because the ground is level at the cross. that even the most heinous person in the world can still find salvation through Jesus. He needs to be the center.